joke about being the first one after lunch or the last one before the break, so I guess you have no excuse for, or I have no excuse for you being bored. But it's great to be here and to have an audience that I hope will find this particular application of risk assessment of interest. I suppose it'll be old news to the people from BC Hydro, but maybe the rest of you will find it interesting. Just briefly, for those of you who may not know about Tetra Tech, we've been around since about the 60s with origins really in water and wastewater work. We've grown over the decades to include a wide variety of other areas of expertise and sector focuses. We've really been able to retain this ability, though, despite the growing size, to work effectively across the skills that the company has to really bring the best solution to a particular need of a client. We have offices, about 275 offices throughout the U.S. and good presence internationally out in India and Asia and elsewhere. And we focus the organization of the business across the main elements, really, of development of a project, from the initial study, feasibility, and assessments, and so forth, to the actual building and implementation of it. Very multidisciplinary within each category, and so we're able to, again, benefit from reaching across the different elements to bring the right team together. And an example of where we do this well is with climate change. So we're able to bring in initial science modeling or GHG emission inventory assessments for really just about any sector out there. We're able to do both kind of the softer side and the harder side, if you will, of adaptation planning and response. And we also do a great deal with mitigation strategies to reduce emissions through carbon capture and storage, cleaner, lower fossil fuel energy sources, and carbon market related work. What I wanted to focus on for the sake of hydropower is this climate risk assessment work that we're doing. Climate change is not really so much changing the rules of any of these games so much as it is changing the strategy that we need to apply in order to respond effectively to it. So we know pretty much anybody now who deals with infrastructure issues anywhere is beginning to recognize, if they haven't already, that climate change is affecting existing projects and will affect future projects that'll still have, hopefully, long lifetimes in the planning horizon. Climate change is going to affect industry and projects in all sectors in all countries. And the reality is that the way that we've approached the evaluation in the past isn't necessarily good enough for effectively evaluating and responding to what will happen in the future. So we need to figure out how to do that better in order to anticipate the challenges of climate change. And again, with hydro, not to go into it in great detail, but I'm going to come back to this, so I just wanted to make the point that the simplistic science of climate change is that we've got more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, we have an enhanced global warming effect, which has the effect of trapping more of that solar energy within the planet, within the blanket of the enhanced greenhouse gas effect. And that has direct impacts on all the major systems of the planet: atmospheric, terrestrial, ocean, freshwater, and saltwater. So there are quick references in this diagram to the fact that these temperature changes will affect ocean currents and winds and evaporation and cloud formation. So it becomes very complicated and challenging to address effectively, which is something, of course, that's pretty important for hydropower. What makes it extra tricky is the fact that we talk about global climate change, but in fact, your projects are not global projects. They're going to be located in a specific place, and that specific place is going to have its own little combination of impacts that's going to be different from a lot of other places. So this is just a quick illustration to make the point that temperature, although globally generally increasing, is going to increase to a different extent in different locations for a combination of reasons that has to do with the way solar energy is being affected. So this is just to make the point that it's different in different locations, and that's just with temperature. Precipitation is actually even trickier to try to anticipate. So what I wanted to just show you briefly this kind of risk assessment approach that we find very useful for hydropower projects and for other projects as well. And it really focuses on number one, because number one is the one that's changing, the climate change. 2 through 4 are other analytic steps in the chain, but they are really not new steps so much as steps that are being changed by the results of point number 1 there. And then we get from the kind of the analytical analysis into more, in some cases, more indirect and subjective considerations for secondary impacts that might be harder to assess analytically. So what we do when we start this is we have to figure out what is this kind of climate change future that we're trying to anticipate, and how are we going to characterize that in terms of the local level. And I don't want to get in, of course, into the political challenges of whose fault it is and who should be doing more to reduce the problem or what have you. I just want to basically pick some future scenarios to have to look at. Could be only one, but a lot of times what we do is we pick we try to bookend the climate change future. So we look at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change put out its report. That's the scientific body that really does the heavy lifting for the likes of the UNFCCC folks at Kyoto Protocol and so forth. And they've come up with several scenarios of CO2 concentration in the atmosphere there on the y-axis. And essentially the green line, B1, as you can see, is the most optimistic scenario because it presumes the smallest increase in that concentration of CO2. A2 is a fairly pessimistic scenario, the kind of yellow-brown line going up to somewhere in the mid-800s for the year 2100 in terms of the concentration of CO2 projected. So there's a lot more complexity that goes into how those are defined and how likely they are and what the uncertainty is around them. But to basically just make, what I wanted to do is just make the point that those are two scenarios over a 100-year planning horizon that could be helpful to inform the kind of realities that a hydropower project would have to address. So if you define your future scenario that way in terms of CO2 concentration, then what you do is you look at what is the global estimate of what primarily temperature and precipitation are going to be like at that time. And I know this is a little busy, and I don't mean to really go into any one of those 6 elements there, but what I just wanted to do is make the point for you that there are 21 or 22 of these global circulation models, these GCM models, that again are very complicated representations of the planetary systems in an integrated fashion. Atmospheric, ocean, and land is what that little inset is showing you. And so what these 21 models do is they basically break down the whole planet into 3-dimensional grid cells and model the physics and the chemistry of the interactions that will result from those future scenarios. So they use all the scenarios. We were going to look at 2, and we're looking at 2 scenarios for 6 of the GCMs because it's actually been shown that the range of uncertainty and variability around the 21 is actually captured within any 6. If you pick any 6, you're basically getting the same range of variability that you'd get if you used all of them. And obviously there's a big resource difference between 6 and 21. So we pick 6 typically to use for the global evaluation. Then what we do is we downscale. Actually, just as a reminder too, these grid cells are basically, depending on the model, on the order of 200 kilometers square, maybe 250, give or take. And so you see in this example, that grid cell is being driven through a portion of England. And if you were going to cite something within that grid cell, you're actually not getting really very refined information from these global circulation models because they're not meant to be more refined.